Okay, so in Unit 4, we're going to talk about graphing quadratics. So in the first section, we're going to do standard form. So we need to figure out what standard form is. So remember that a quadratic equation means that it's going to be x squared as highest power. In standard form, you're going to write the terms in descending order. And the maximum, there will be 3. So there'll be ax squared plus bx plus c. So we are going to start with our first example, and this is the most basic quadratic equation. F of x equals x squared. Remember, f of x is the same as y, so this is y equals x squared. So if we want to make a table, we're going to start with, I like to put 0 in the middle. We need some positives, and we need some negative numbers. Now, when you're typing this into a calculator and you're doing a negative, make sure you're using parentheses around the negative number. So negative 2 squared means negative 2 times negative 2, so the answer is positive 4. So we'll go ahead and plot that to the left 2 and then up 4. Then we do negative 1 squared, so negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So to left 1, up 1. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. And then 2 squared is positive 4. So to the right 2 and up 4. And if we keep going, we'll find more points as well. And so we want to connect this in a smooth, continuous curve. It's not a V shape, it's more of a U, all right? So this is going to be the parent graph. So this gives you the shape. The graph of a quadratic function, it is a U shape, but the fancy name for that is a parabola. And so all x squared equations will be a parabola shape, okay? We're just going to move them all around. So on the domain is the x values. You can plug in any x value you want. So we call this all real numbers, or we're going to go from negative infinity to positive infinity. The range are your y values. So on x squared, the lowest y value is 0, and then we can use all the y values that are bigger. So we can call that x is greater than or equal to, y is greater than or equal to 0, or in interval notation, we say 0 to infinity. So what divides the parabola into mirror images that pass through the vertex? Well, that is going to be if I drew an imaginary line right down the middle of my parabola, okay? That is called the line of symmetry. And so it's always going to be a vertical line, and our vertex is at 0, so the equation would be x equals 0, all right? The lowest point on a parabola, or highest point, is called the vertex. So I might call it the bottom or top, but its special name right here, that is called the vertex. And then that is line of symmetry. Okay, and so we can answer different questions. So the standard form for a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. These are going to be our general formulas. So if we wanted to find the axis of symmetry without graphing it, we could use this formula right here. Okay, so b is the coefficient of the middle term. Negative b, or the opposite of b, divided by 2 times a. Remember, a is the coefficient of x squared. Okay, so the line of symmetry and the vertex are going to have the same x value. The y-intercept is c. So remember, y-intercept means if x equals 0. So if we plug in 0, we would get c. So the point, let's do a different color. 0c is on the parabola, okay? The graph opens up if a is positive, and a, remember, is the leading coefficient of x squared, so it'll look like this, and down if a is negative. So it'll look like an upside down U. The vertex's y-coordinate is the what of the function? Well, we call it the max or min because it's the y value, okay? So if a is positive, we're going to go ahead and erase it. If A is positive, it opens up, and so that's going to be a minimum. And it's going to be a maximum if our graph opens down, and so A is negative. Okay? So it's the highest or lowest point. All right, so some steps. Well, what do we need to graph this parabola? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about next. So first we need to find A, B, and C. So if your graph is not in order, then I'm going to tell you put in order. And you always go from high to low. Okay? Then we want to find the vertex, and we find the vertex by doing negative b over 2a. I found it by graphing, but that was only on the parent function, the very basic, okay? We're going to find the y value of the vertex by plugging in the x value into the original equation, okay? And then we always plot that point first. Then we're going to draw the line of symmetry, and that means we really only have to find half of the values, because then it's going to be the mirror image, okay? So then we're going to find the y-intercept by substituting x equals 0. And then we can connect the points. So for a parabola, we really need 3 points minimum. We need the vertex. We need 1 point to the right, and we need 1 point to the left, okay, in order to get that U shape. 5 is the best, but 3 is the minimum. So on a line, you only needed 2 points. On a parabola, you really do need 3 to make that curved shape. And every time it should be a curve, okay? So if you don't get a curve, you either pick the wrong values or you did something incorrect, okay? So for our examples, we're going to find all of this information. So you should have some kind of work for some of these statements, okay, on your paper. And I made it a PDF so you can do your work on paper and submit pictures of them as well, okay? So on number 1, we've got 2x squared minus 8x plus c, 6. So we've got a is 2. Oops, I'm going to erase that so it can be even better. B is negative 8. Notice I put the negative with it. And C is positive 6. Okay? So if we want to find our vertex, we can show some work. So we get x equals negative b, or the opposite of b, over 2 times a. So for our equation, well, the opposite of b is positive 8. And then 2 times a, 2 times 2 is 4. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. The vertex is going to be an ordered pair, so if we want to find the y value, we're going to substitute x equals 2 into the original equation. So I'm going to do it over here to the right. You get 2x squared minus 8x plus 6. If x equals 2, you can type this into a calculator. Okay? And so we would get 8. 8 minus 16 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. Okay? So I'm going to come down here and we're going to plot that point. So 2, negative 2, and that's our vertex. Since if we look at A is positive, so what we know is that our graph should open up. So that point that we just found, the vertex, that should be the lowest point. All right, our line of symmetry, we're going to draw that in, and it goes right through your vertex. So remember, for our axis of symmetry, it's going to be the equation of that x value. So we know that it's going to be x equals 2. Don't just put 2. It really needs to be an equation. Okay? So because our graph opens up, we know that that's going to be the smallest point, so it's going to be a minimum. So I just circle that. All right, for the y-intercept, we let x equal 0 in the original equation. So we get 2 times 0 squared minus 8 times 0 plus 6. So, oops, I want to write that down there. 2 times 0 squared minus 8 times 0 plus 6. So we get 0, and 0 minus 0 plus 6 is 6. Okay? So I'm going to plot that. We get 0 and then up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now technically I have 2 points, and because this is going to be like a mirror image, I'm 2 to the left, so I'm going to go 2 to the right. And I really do have enough to draw my curve. Okay, and then I'll make it solid. I just do my dot, so it helps me. All right. Now, domain is always, we can always plug in any number we want, so it's always going to be all real numbers. That's like a double R. If you want to write all real numbers, you're welcome to. All real numbers. The range, we always want to go from low to high. So the lowest y value is the vertex. So that's at -2. If we're going to use a bracket, so -2, and then we go higher, so we say infinity. If you want to write that using inequalities, you can. So it'd be y is greater than or equal to -2. Okay. Integral notation is better, but maybe until you get more used to it, you can write it with inequalities. All right. So let's try another one. Now, on this one, we only have 2 terms. So since the number is missing at the end, you can always write +0, okay? So what we have is we need to find our vertex. Well, I like to have a little thing. So we know if A is negative, what we know is the shape should be like this. So that means it opens down. So I'm going to have a high point. So I know I'm going to have a max. All right, our vertex, -b, or opposite of b, over 2 times a. So the opposite, so here's a, b, and c. So the opposite of -6 is +6, and then 2 times -3 is -6, which gives me -1, okay? So I know -1. Now, when we go to plug into a calculator, make sure you're using parentheses. So what I want to type in is -3 parenthesis -1 squared, and you would do this in a computer, -6 parenthesis -1, and then +0. All right, so if we type all that in, that'll give us our y value. So we get -3 + 6 is 3. Make sure you type that in and that you get that same answer. Okay, so I'll give you a couple seconds just to check. Okay, so if I plot -1, +3, we go to the left one and we go up 3, and that's going to be our highest point. All right, so our axis of symmetry goes right down the middle, and it's that x value. The axis of symmetry is imaginary, that's why I keep it dotted. So it's going to be x equals -1. The y-intercept, we let x equal 0. So if I substitute into the original, we get -3 times 0 squared minus 6 times 0 plus 0, which gives us 0. So that means that the point 0, 0 is on our graph. So I'm going to plot that. Now, we actually have enough. So if that's 1 to the right, I'm going to go 1 to the left, and I know the other point is there. And so then we can make our curved parabola. All right. Domain is always all real numbers. Now, this time though, our lowest number in the y, we want to look at the bottom. So we keep going. So -infinity is the lowest. And the highest number is this y value, which is 1, 2, 3. If we want to write it in the inequality, I can say y is less than or equal to 3. Okay, so I'll take either one. I'm pretty flexible. All right, this one, we just want to find if we have a max or a min, and then we want to find that value. So remember, you want, for the maximum, you want the y value. Okay, so it's really of that vertex. So what we know is it's based on A. So our A is 3, which means my graph opens up, And so I know I'm going to have a minimum. So we really need to find the whole vertex. I don't know what x value it's at, but I really need to find the y value. Okay, so for our vertex, we've got negative b, or opposite of b, over 2 times a. So a, b, c. So the opposite of b is positive 18. And then 2 times a is 3. So 18 over 6 is 3. Okay, that's our x value. So we need to find the y value. So remember, to find the y value, we're going to plug that in. So we get 3 times 3 squared minus 18 times 3 plus 20. So you can go ahead and get a calculator and you can type that in. So 3 times 3 squared minus 18 times 3 plus 20. So negative 7. So the minimum is negative 7. Okay. We needed to find the x value, but the minimum value is the y value only. All right, let's try number 4. So we've got A, B, and it looks like C is 0. Well, if A is negative, it opens down, and so we have a high point. So we know we have a maximum. Same thing, we need to find the vertex. So the vertex is the opposite of B over 2 times A. Well, the opposite of B is 4, so we get negative 4 over 2 times A is negative 1/2. And we could type that into a calculator as well. So if you're typing that in, you'll probably want to use parentheses or do it separately. So negative 4 divided by parentheses 2 times negative 1/2. You want to type that in, and we get positive 4. So now we'll go ahead and find the y value. So y, we use our original. So negative 1/2, we're going to plug in 4, and then plus 4 times 4. Okay, so go ahead and we'll just type that straight into a calculator. To put in the fraction, you just do divide. So negative 1 divided by 2, parenthesis, 4 parentheses squared, plus 4 times 4. And I got 8. Okay, so type that in and make sure that you also get 8 when you type it in, because that's really going to be the only error, is making sure you use all the parentheses and the negatives and you get the right number. So this is your time to check. So that means our maximum value is 8. And so I'm going to go ahead and circle that right here. I know it's a lot of work, okay? But that's how we find it. All right, so I give you student practice, and I want you to do any 2 problems out of these 3, okay? So please go ahead and show some work. If you need more room, remember you're writing this on paper, so go ahead and just use room under it, okay? All right, good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.